It's Kardea Brown and welcome to my home kitchen here on Edisto Island. Today I'm making you a sweet Gullah classic, and that is sweet potato pone. It's a sweet potato casserole, kind of sort of like a custard as well. It's a great side dish, or it could be served as a sweet dessert. My favorite way to serve it is with a sweet eggnog whipped cream. It really brings out those warm flavors. But before we get going, preheat your oven to 350 and get a 9x9 casserole dish and spray it with non-stick cooking spray. All right, ain't nothing to it but to do it. Let's head over to our stove. So what we're doing now is heating our saucepan. I have a cute little pan here, but any saucepan will work. Let's melt 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter. I like using unsalted butter because I can control the amount of salt that goes into the dish. And right now we're just gonna wait for that butter to melt. Okay, just a few more seconds. And you can swivel your saucepan around just to help the melting go a little faster. And that's it, our butter is melted. All right, let's head back over to the counter. Set your butter to the side. And now we're gonna peel and grate about 2 pounds of sweet potato, which equals about 3 sweet potatoes, okay? So sweet potato pone is sort of like, well, it has the same flavors of a sweet potato pie, but it's more like a custard. It's gonna have a really soft but firm texture. You're gonna get the texture of the grated sweet potatoes in there as well, but it definitely has the flavor of a sweet potato pie. We're gonna peel all 3. Leaving none of the skin on. Okay. Right. And this is a recipe my great-grandmother passed down to my grandmother. It's something that she made in her household on special occasions. When she didn't feel like making a sweet potato pie, she would make a sweet potato pone. And she actually served it for breakfast. See? It's a very versatile dish. All right, let's clean up the potato skin. All right, we're gonna use the finer side of the grater. If you want larger strips of sweet potato, you can use this side, but I prefer to use the finer side, okay? What I like to do is just cut off the ends and just grate using the finer side. This is where you get your workout in. If you find this process a little too much, then you can always cook your sweet potatoes and then mash them. I prefer shredding like my great-grandmother did because I like the texture of shredded sweet potatoes in this dessert. So if you use the finer side of your grater, it should look something like this, thin shreds. It's a slow process. Things in Gullah just don't happen quickly. It's not fast food. If it comes easy, it won't last long. Okay. So Gullah cooking is not really heavy on the desserts. I've found in recent years, over the last few decades, that we've incorporated more of just the Southern way of making desserts. But typically, Gullah cooking does not have a lot of sweets. We have sweet potato pie, we have sweet potato pone, we make bread pudding, but just out of the way they lived during those times, like when my great-grandmother was growing up, they just didn't have the resources. So if there was anything sweet, it would come from the land. My ancestors' definition of a dessert was getting a sweet watermelon from the watermelon patch, you know? It wasn't necessarily cakes and cookies. It was eating the sweets of the earth, like a sweet potato. It is the truth. My grandma, we ain't have no cakes. We had sweet potato pie, sweet potato pone, and bread pudding if we were lucky. Ooh, child. A triceps. So I'm going to keep grating these. I'll meet you back here when we're done. Okay, we've grated up all of our sweet potatoes. Now we're going to add that melted butter, 4 tablespoons, into a large bowl. Now we're going to add 1/3 cup of light brown sugar. Make sure it's packed into your measuring cup. And we're going to add 1/4 cup of molasses. Just going to eyeball this. Okay. Let's whisk together our sugars and butter. Okay. Leave your whisk in the bowl. Let's whisk together 3 eggs in a separate bowl. 3 whole eggs. And it's good to use a separate bowl for your eggs because you want to make sure that the eggs are thoroughly whisked. Just whisk until the yolk is broken. Okay. That whisk. Add your whisked eggs to the bowl. And now we're going to add 1/2 cup of 50/50. We're going to add in a teaspoon of vanilla extract. That's just about 1 capful. Okay. Now we're going to add in our spices. We have a 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of ginger. It's going to give it a really nice snap. 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt. Really brings those sugars out. All right, now we're just going to add in a little nutmeg. I'm using fresh. Fresh is much more pronounced than ground nutmeg, so use just a little more if you want that more of that nutmeg flavor. Okay. All right, give it a whisk, and this is going to look like a custard, right? This is going to give you a custard in your bowl here. All right, we're just going to grate in a little bit of fresh orange zest, just to give it a little hint of citrus. So we grated in about a teaspoon of fresh orange zest. Now we're just going to add in the juice of 1/2 of this orange, about 3 tablespoons of freshly squeezed orange juice. Give it another whisk. Wipe your hands if you need to. This is not an overly sweet dessert. You're going to get a lot of that sweetness, fresh sweetness from the sweet potatoes, okay? Now we're just going to add in our grated sweet potato. And we're going to incorporate that with the spatula, okay? All right. Let's fold in our sweet potato with our custard. So folding in helps you mix all of your ingredients in without losing the volume. Just make sure the custard is fully mixed in with the sweet potatoes. I like to fold and pat, scraping the bottom up. All right, that looks great. Let's get our 9x9 casserole dish that's been sprayed with nonstick cooking spray. And just add in your mixture. Okay. All right. Just fold it down here. Press it down firmly into your casserole dish here. Just fold it on down. Make sure it's nice and even. Okay. All right. So we're going to cover this with foil. Right, let's head over to the oven. Bake it covered for 40 minutes. Okay. And while that's in the oven, we're going to put our bowl and mixer in the freezer. Remember, we got to make this eggnog whipped cream. So let's get this chilled for 40, hit pause, and I'll meet you back here soon. Hey, it's been 40 minutes and it's time to uncover our pone. Okay, let's take that foil right off. Okay. In the next 10 minutes, it's going to get nice and caramelized on top, okay? While that happens, let's make our eggnog whipped cream. Our bowl has been chilling for 40 minutes with the beater in the freezer. The reason I like doing that is to get a nice stapled whipped cream, okay? And it needs to be very cold in order to get that, okay? Now we're going to add in a cup of heavy cream to our cold bowl. Okay. All right. And I like to add in a few tablespoons of confectioner's sugar here. That's going to help get some of that volume in the whipped cream as well. Let's start off with 3 heavy tablespoons. You can taste to see if you can adjust, if you want to add more, but 3 tablespoons should do. All right, let's get our mixer on high. And we're just going to beat this until it gets nice and fluffy. We're looking for stiff peaks. There's one thing that I learned when I started making whipped cream at home is that if you beat too much, you will destroy that whipped cream. So slowly beat, and if it looks like it's getting thick, just take your time. Do not overbeat or you will have to start over again, okay? And it's already starting to get some volume. Now this is not a part of the original sweet potato pone recipe. I like to do my contemporary spins on my family's traditional recipes. So this is just a great addition to that sweet potato pone. Okay. Let's slow down. It looks like it's getting nice and thick, and we definitely have stiff peaks. Stiff because the bowl was cold, the beater was cold, and the heavy whipping cream is also cold, okay? Let's grate in some nutmeg. I'm using fresh, but you can definitely use ground nutmeg if you have that in your pantry. And let's say it's a 1/4 teaspoon of freshly grated nutmeg or ground nutmeg. Okay. Now we're gonna fold in a 1/3 cup of eggnog. Okay. Gently fold that in. You don't want to break your whipped cream, okay? That should do it. This is a great holiday whipped cream. It's really going to bring forth those warm flavors in the pone. Okay, that looks nice and velvety. Let's taste just to make sure we don't need to add any more nutmeg. That's great. It's velvety. You taste a hint of that eggnog and the nutmeg. That is going to go really great on top of that sweet potato pone. So this is done. We have a few more minutes on that pone. Hit pause and I'll meet you back here in a few. Alrighty, it's been 10 minutes. Our sweet potato pone has been cooking uncovered. Now it's done. So let's pull it out of the oven. Oh, it smells incredible, doesn't it? Okay. Look at that. Nice and golden brown, super bubbly on the edges. Okay, so the best way to serve sweet potato pone is at room temperature. That way it's already set and gets nice and solid. So let this rest for about 30 minutes and we'll meet back and taste it. All right, so it's been about 30 minutes and our sweet potato pone has come to room temperature. Let's plate and taste it. Okay. What I like to do is cut just a little square. Just loosen it up around the edges. Take a cake server and just scoot underneath. It's a nice little size for myself. And that's how it should look when you take it out of your casserole dish. Now let's top it with our whipped eggnog cream. It's just a little dollop on top. All right. Give it a try. Oh yeah, this smells delicious. I don't know about you, but it's making me dance. The texture of the sweet potatoes, it's velvety, it's smooth, getting all of the flavors of the nutmeg, the cinnamon. I definitely taste that orange zest and orange juice. It just complements those warm spices really well. And then that whipped eggnog cream just smooths everything on out. This is Gullah Sweet Potato Pone.